Um, I just wanted to say that this video is going to be really long. Bear with me. There's a lot to learn, but I hope I can simplify and make it very easy to follow as much as I can. So, um, before maybe I'll do the triangles of the neck in a later video, but I want to go into the main important um, topic here, which is the muscles of the neck. This can be a pain in the ass topic because there's a lot of muscles in the neck and they're divided into superficial and deep. And so um, I would try my best to go through them as fast as I can, but um, keep in mind that this is one of the toughest places you can ever start um, when it comes to anatomy. Okay, so um, I'll use these two tables as a guidance towards what I am explaining and show you exactly where those muscles are and how everything is situated. I hate this light so much. Um, and so just to keep an eye about how our progress is, um, you guys are required to know every single muscle here, the attachments, the functions, the position of it, the insertions, origins, and stuff like that. So for this video, I'll be using these notes, and through them, we're going to go through it. And I hope I can cover all of the muscles of the neck through this video using this guidance. So first off, I would dive into the neck in general. So what happens here is that you guys have to keep in mind that the neck is divided into fascias, and fascias are basically layers or of tissue that surround the muscles or even surround structures within the neck that keeps things together. So let's start here. So number one, the superficial fascia of the neck. The superficial fascia of the neck is the most superficial thing that you can ever touch, and this comes in play as it has the platysma muscle, cutaneous branch of the cervical plexus, and superficial veins. Now, because I'm diving into the muscles, I would rather focus only on the muscles, but you guys are welcome to use other parts of the notes that are present here because my professor had covered everything related to a fascia. Okay, so okay, platysma, number one. Platysma muscle, the origin of it is from the deep fascia covering pectoralis major and deltoid muscle. Um, I would there's always a dispute about the origins and insertion of muscles, but I think as close as you can get to the similarities between all the sources, I think you should be fine. You see here, it tells you the origin is switched actually between the source and the source. I would stick to this one, but Sersky really does not really mind you guys switching insertions and origins, but I would always stick to this one because the professor that I work with is a PhD professor. So an origin is from the deep fascia covering pectoralis major and deltoid muscle, insertion into the lower border of mandible and skin of the face. Nerve supply, cervical branch of the facial nerve. Action, wrinkles the skin, does those actions, and then also helps to depress the mandible by this movement. And so um, they almost match except for origin insertion. That's number one muscle that is done. That's the most superficial muscle of the neck, platysma. Next, sternocleidomastoid muscle. Just know that cutaneous nerves, cutaneous branch of the cervical plexus is found within the superficial fascia, and you are going to be studying the cervical plexus in the future, and these are the cutaneous branch that come on closest to the superficial skin, and then finally the superficial veins. Such as the external jugular vein, which is an actually important vein that you need to study. Next, we're going to discuss the sternocleidomastoid muscle. The sternocleidomastoid muscle is part of the deep investing fascia, which is deep investing fascia is right here. And so just to show you an idea where the deep investing fascia is and where the superficial fascia is. The superficial fascia is the most superficial fascia. Platysma, right? That's the muscle we discussed right now, is found on the most external part just below the skin. That's the superficial fascia. The deep investing fascia is just below the superfascia, and it has two layers, which then takes between those two layers, the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius muscle, which are the two muscles that we're going to discuss next here, found on the table that I'm pointing at. So sternocleidomastoid muscle here. So it's a sternocleidomastoid muscle. The origin of the sternocleidomastoid muscle and what it's made up of. It is made up of two heads: sternal head and clavicle head. Sternal head from the manubriosternal origin, and the clavicle head from the clavicle, and they both insert onto the lateral surface of the mastoid process and lateral 1/3 of the superior nuchal line. And that's the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Let's see if this, yes, this matches. That's the origin and that's the insertion. There we go. And so the nerve supply is by the spinal accessory nerve and branches from C2 and C3 of the cervical plexus, from proprioception. Okay, so the action of this muscle. So when it contracts, look, I'm contracting, my right one takes my head to the left. Okay, so that's how it is. And also it brings my right ear towards my right shoulder. And that's the action of the right one. So it moves my head to the left, gets the right ear to the, goes to the right shoulder. That's the two actions here. Okay, relations. I don't know if you really need the relations, but it can be very good for your knowledge, and you can go ahead and dive into it on your own. Okay. Next we have let's go into the lateral vertebral muscles first. We have the scalene anterior muscle, and the scalene muscles are divided into three: anterior scalene, middle scalene, and posterior scalene. And the scalene muscles, the scalene anterior muscle origin by forces from the anterior tubercles of the transverse process of C3, C4, C5, and C6 vertebrae in the cervical region of the vertebra, insertion into the scalene tubercle on the inner border of the first rib. Nerve supply from the anterior anterior rami of C4, C5, and C6 action, flexion of the neck forwards and laterally, elevation of the rib during force inspiration. So scalene muscles help in getting the ribs upwards for inhalation. And so you can also read about the relations right here for the anterior scalene. Can be very useful. The other three scalene muscles, you have the scalene medius, scalene posterior, and scalene minimus. We don't really care about the minimus, but mainly focus on the middle and posterior and anterior. Same here. So we've done with anterior, we've done now with middle and posterior. The medius is the largest of all scalenes, origin from the posterior tubercle of all cervical plexus, all of them. Insertion into the upper surface of the first vertebra behind the subclavian groove. Nerve supply from all cranial nerves, action, flexion of cervical vertebra, and fixation of the first nerve, first rib. Okay, that's the medius. The posterior, origin from the posterior tubercle of C4, C5, and C6 vertebra. Okay, right here shown, and insertion on the outer surface of the second rib behind the serrated tubercle. Nerve supply for C4, C5, C6 nerve, cervical nerves, action, lateral flexion of the neck, fixation of the second rib. So this is done for the scalene muscles. Now we're probably gonna dive into the Levator Scapulae. I hope I can find it here. Let's see. No, not yet. We don't need this ones yet. Myelohyde, hyoid. Let's have that. Just 1 second. And yeah, so these notes are really good. I really recommend them for all the people who are studying right now. They basically have everything you need. But let me just go dive into, and so we finished anterior scalene, middle scalene, posterior scalene. We finished Platysma, Sternocleidomastoid trapezius, and now I'm just searching for the Levator Scapulae. Basically, it's discussing all the relations towards near the muscles. I just want to finish the muscles before diving into anything else. These are veins of the neck. These are phrenic nerves. Posterior triangle. Yeah, so there we go. Levator Scapulae, that's it. So second one, I hope I can find it. Yeah, Levator Scapulae. Nerves, posterior triangle, subposterior triangle. Let's see. Yep, it's not found here, but let's just see. So Levator Scapulae. Levator Scapulae is a transverse. So the origin is from transverse of C1 to C4, and the insertion is the medial border of the scapula, and the innervation is the dorsal scapular nerve, and C3 and C5 spinal nerves, and it elevates the scapula. That's the Levator Scapulae from its name. Okay, these muscles right here, they are muscles of close to the superior part, just on the in relations with um, the cranium here, the rectus capitis, anterior rectus capitis lateralis, longus coeli, and longus capitis. Make sure you know them. I don't know if they're found in my notes because I don't want to waste your time searching for them. But this is a very good summary of the medial vertebral muscles. We've discussed lateral vertebral muscles and superficial muscles. These ones from here to here are considered the deep muscles of the neck. These ones are superficial. We have a couple more superficial muscles, and I'll show you right now where they are. And they are the hyoid muscles that we will be using for this video till the end of it. So here, 1 second, let me see, can I use there? So I would need this one. I'm going to put it here. There. So the hyoid muscles. The hyoid muscles are the muscles that are in relation to the hyoid bone. They're either suprahyoid or infrahyoid. So infrahyoid is below the hyoid muscle, and suprahyoid is above the hyoid. So not the hyoid muscle, the hyoid bone. So in relation to the hyoid bone. And so these muscles have, we also have notes for them here. Let's see. So there we go. There we go. So we have, first of all, the gastric triangle and submandibular region. I will dive into the triangles in a bit, just after this video, but let's just finish the muscles for the sake of this video. So stylo hyoid, from its name, I would say that it originates from the styloid process to the hyoid bone and of the temporal bone, styloid process of the temporal bone, and inserts into hyoid bone, and innervation is innervated by the facial nerve, and all of those things just superior to the hyoid bone have the same functions, and mainly they elevate the hyoid bone during swallowing. That's the main function, and there's other functions that you can go through. Genuine, and glosses. Where's that? I'm searching for a stylohyoid here. Okay, so we don't have it here, but you guys have it on this summary. So we have okay, so we have the digastric muscle. The digastric muscle is this one right here. It has two bellies, the anterior belly and the posterior belly. The anterior belly arises from the digastric fossa on the lower border of the mandible close to the symphysis. And the posterior arises from the digastric notch on the medial surface of the mastoid process, and insertion, both of them insert onto the tendon, intermediate tendon, which connected to the hyoid bone by a fibrous loop. That's the digastric nerve supply. It by the anterior belly inferior alveolar nerve. Yes, the anterior belly is inferior alveolar nerve. Okay, so yes, and then the posterior belly by facial nerve as it develops from the second pharyngeal arch. The actions, the anterior belly depresses the chin, posterior belly retracts the hyoid bone upwards and backwards. Both bellies suspend the hyoid bone and fix it to allow better action on infrahyoid muscle. So this is the digastric muscle relations. You can go over it on your own. We have myelohyde, which is part of the suprahyoid muscles. It is a thin sheath of muscle which forms the floor of the anterior part of the mouth and is called the oral diaphragm. And basically all of this right here is the myelohyde muscle, and origin is from the myelohyde line of the mandible and inserts into the hyoid bone. So the nerve supply is nerve to myelohyoid, a branch of the infraalveolar nerve. In action, they support the floor of the mouth, they elevate the floor of the mouth, they can depress the mandible. Okay, myelohyoid done. Relations as well. Then finally, we have the genohyoid. It is a small muscle that begins here, origin from the inferior genial tubercle, and insertion into the upper surface of the body of the hyoid. Sorry, it's this one. So from the inferior genial tubercle down to the upper surface of the hyoid, supplied from C1 via hypoglossal nerve, and action elevates the hyoid. It can depress the mandible if the hyoid bone is fixed. Okay, and you have a summary of this in here. The sternal. Then we're going to discuss probably the infrahyoid muscles. The infrahyoid muscles, I hope I can find them here. Yes, the infrahyoid muscles are the sternohyoid muscle, the omohyoid muscle, the sternothyroid muscle, and the thyrohyoid. From their name, sternohyoid, from the sternum to the hyoid bone, from the sternum to the hyoid bone. Omohyoid is made up of two bellies, superior belly, inferior superior belly. The superior belly. The inferior belly is attached to it through the intermedial tendon. Inferior belly, superior border of scapula. So you see, the inferior belly is attached to the scapula, and then the superior belly to the hyoid, of course, and then the superior belly is attached to the inferior belly here at this intermediate tendon. And so sternohyoid from the sternum, somewhere at the sternum. Sorry, the omohyoid, somewhere at the scapula, somewhere at the scapula to the hyoid bone. The sternohyoid is from the somewhere at the sternum all the way up to the hyoid bone, and both of them are innervated by the C1 and C3 by ansa cervicalis, and they depress the larynx and hyoid bone after swallowing. So sternothyroid is from the sternum. So the origin is from posterior surface of the marubium of the sternum here, posterior surface of the marubium of the sternum, to the oblique line of the thyroid cartilage. Thyroid cartilage is part of the larynx. C2-3C by ansa cervicalis is the innervation, and they depress also the larynx and hyoid bone after swallowing. Thyrohyoid is from the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone here. Thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone, that's the thyrohyoid, and that's the sternothyroid. And so these are basically a little bit easier because their names just tell you where the origins and insertions are. Okay, and so that's basically it for the muscles of the neck, superficial to deep. I hope you enjoyed it, and so you need to know that the superficial are the most superficial, and then the most superficial can be suprahyoid or infrahyoid muscles, or they can be the deepest muscles such as the Levator Scapulae, anterior scalene, middle scalene, posterior scalene, or the rectus capitis, anterioralis, rectus capitis, lateralis, or longus scali or longus capitis. Okay, so all those muscles are involved in the muscles of the neck. And thank you very much for joining in, and let me know if you have any questions. See you guys in the next video where we discuss the triangles of the neck.